Now we really were exceptionally lucky to get Chris's bike down here, to get the tank painted and ready to buff, and get 2 days of riding, because right now the weather's just going, it's raining out there now. It's supposed to be raining for the next 3 days. I look around and I think, that was some pretty, we were lucky. I always like to think we were smart. It's just as good to be lucky, maybe even a little better. But I had a little project today that I thought I'd try. Now, I haven't done this in a long time. I haven't taken paint that's only really 2 days old and tried to buff it. And I thought, well, let's see if it buffs out. We got nothing to lose today. If it doesn't, I'll come out here and do some cleanup on this. But I wanted to see for my own knowledge. Here's the reason. All the people I do business with at Gavin's and at Chard's and the different paints that I've done, when I worked for Randolph and did development work for them on their paint, there never was a consensus of opinion of how long it takes the paint to really fully dry so you can buff it. Certain paints buff out. An example is acrylic lacquer. If you let it dry a month, it buffs out a lot easier than, and we did tests on that. Brodak dope, same thing. The longer you let it wait, the better it'll buff out. But modern car paint is not like that. These automotive paints are very different. And so I've always used old school technology on what amounts to be new school stuff. So today I'll get to do my experiment. The paint is now in its 3rd day of drying. It's been sitting under a heating vent. This should be an interesting day. And all the parts we're going to need to do Chris's R6 have already been shipped. They should be here in 2 to 3 days. I'm really looking forward to when this project is finished, that she will have a very safe bike for a lot of years to come. And now that it's being kept in the garage, it might even stay safe for a lot longer. I don't know. But this is going to be one of the projects we work on in between working on our own stuff. But today, when it's a rainy day like this, you know you can't paint, you know you can't ride, but you can always work on this kind of sanding and buffing. And maybe we'll learn something today we didn't know in the past. Now, Turbo Steve has always been really, really helpful with ideas, help, concept drawings. He's a very talented guy and always willing to share the information. And he shared a couple of things that I thought it's just as easy to share them on a video as by email. He sucks the last bit of gas out of his tanks on the bikes that he works on 2 ways: taking a petcock off and with the bleeder pump. And I have 2 of them, so I have tried that in the past, and it still leaves a little bit of gas. The reason I haven't, and I went over this, and it's only me, this is not, most general mechanics would disagree with this, but this has never worked for me. When I break that seal between the gas tank and the petcock or the fuel pump, I don't know if I'm just unlucky or whatever, it always seems to be a problem that I have to replace the gasket 2 or 3 times, scraping off the old gasket or whatever. I have not had good luck doing that. So I just feel, for me, with the kind of technology I have, leaving the tank sealed, and he's right about one thing though, when you're sucking the gas out by an electric motor, it's a bomb. But I guess I'm lucky enough, and my stuff is just so old that it doesn't explode. I don't know. I don't know about that. But anyway, as always, thank you, Steve, for sharing the information. And thanks for help putting that air conditioner in. And that's what the A-Team is about. This A-Team that we always talk about is like helping Chris with her bike. Steve, different things he's done for me, I've done for him, for Glenn, for Mark Morgan. Being in the A-Team, and even honorary people like Dallas, it's a lot of fun. Now, I do know people that have gotten tickets for having zip ties holding plates, because what they try to do is when they're speeding, the plate is supposed to go up so the cops can't get it, and the cops are not stupid, they know that. So when they see this, they know right away, hey, let's suck $100 out of this person's wallet. So first thing I'm going to do today, before I go any further, get a couple of bolts in there and make the bike legal. Now I hope we can save Chris a few bucks if she's riding in New Jersey here, and let's see, we should have some license plate bolts, I hope. This is cheap insurance, by the way. When a cop pulls you over, the first thing they look at is the plate. And if they see the thing, they know that trick. There's no cop, even cops that don't hate motorcycles, know that trick. All right, I feel better about that. Spend that $100 on bagels and coffee and stuff instead of paying tickets for stuff like zip ties on a license plate. Just another rainy day. Just another rainy day. But we're going to use it. Will not be wasted. You think the birds care that it's raining out there? Come on. Feed me. And what else could be more fun? Coffee on a rainy day. But that coffee always tastes better when you're watching a summer ride here. Oh man, summer is going to be here soon. I keep telling myself that. I'm not sure it really is going to happen though. I think we got another month or two. It is really unpredictable weather. But no matter what, it doesn't stop me from reliving these wonderful days of summer. Now listening to that ninja just go through the gears. Okay, after all that, I am highly motivated to get this part buffed out today. But let's see. This will be even more inspiration. This paint has been drying, and of course there's dust and little specks in the paint and some orange peel, which we'll deal with. But the biggest thing is that you cannot, if you close your eyes, you can't tell where that word Kawasaki is. So that's our objective. It's been drying. It's actually 2.5 days here. But now normally I would have waited. If we had Chris's parts, I'd give this a couple extra days to dry. But what I wanted to do, and it's for my own information, because I'm always constantly trying to upgrade my knowledge of this modern paint. I have a real good working knowledge of old paint, acrylic lacquer, urethane, but this modern car paint, and the Gavin's Clear is a modern urethane, 2-part urethane. And it has a lot of good stuff going for it. And I'm never sure if I'm maximizing, because we've talked about, like Turbo Steve and I have talked about, an example when you're doing something like this, and you can pull up the tape an hour later and get a nice clean edge. Well, you really can't do that with lacquer. You really have to let it dry overnight, at least I have anyway. But we've learned a lot, and the biggest thing we've learned, and boy has it opened the door to future projects, these I'll call them stencils for lack of a better word, the mask, the paint masks, and from the computer work that John Pothier has done and Thomas Luciano's stencils, it's going to open up the door in the future to us doing some really, really creative stuff. Because without that stencil, this would have been a notch down on the project, at least my vision of what this project, when it's all done, should look like. So let's see if we can learn something today. I'm going to get out some 2000 grit INDASA sandpaper. It feels dry, but the feel is not the test. You've got to sand and see that you don't get that little chewing gummy goop in the sandpaper, especially when you're using the finer grits like 2000. So the first test is always to test how hard the paint is. Now paint goes through a drying cycle. It's a liquid, then it becomes the equivalent of something you can put your fingernail into, and then it becomes what will, for lack of a better word, it's dry, but it's not really dry. It's still, as time goes by, it's what's called outgassing, and you can smell it. You can take day-old paint, bring it downstairs, put it by a heating vent, and you can smell it. That's molecules outgassing out of the paint. But at some point in time that ends, and the paint is, let's say, hard. Now in lacquer, or acrylic lacquer, or in Brodak dope, or in butyrate dope, nitrate dope, that starts a process where for about 30 days or so, at least I'm just taking a rough guess, when I did the work for Randolph, they were convinced it was about 30 days, and they manufactured the paint. So I guess they really know. But what happens is, when you want to buff paint, see, if this was a taxi cab and we just want to take it out and we're done with it, well, yeah, or ride the bike or whatever. You could go ride this afternoon. But I don't want that. I want that buffed out, show quality finish. And now that's a little more involved, because I want the paint to be as hard as it possibly can be. The same reason a diamond shines, and things that are softer don't shine quite as much. So anyway, there's a little test to do, and I want to just show this. I always like to show one little spot in real time, and it seems like most of the people that watch my channel are serious people that want to learn how to paint, and they want to not learn how to paint with spray cans. They want to do high quality work. So I'm going to take, it's really not important what I have found, although some people swear you have to do this and go back 90 degrees. Well, I haven't found that to be true. As long as you buff out the sanding scratches, I think that's all you really have to do now. This I'm going to assume is going to take a minute or so. I've got soapy water, 2000 grit INDASA, and I'm just going to do one little spot just to show how long this should take. I'm going to try to do as much of it with a block as I can, except never put the block up on a ridge, a mountaintop. But I want to do all the flat areas, especially where these really, I think they add a lot to the project. This lettering, stenciling, whatever you want to call it. And boy, because of this project and because of the people that have helped us, John and Thomas, we are now able to do things on the next project, next year's project. We can envision something really a lot more complicated. Because when you have to do it with stickers, they're always thick, and you run, no matter how much clear you put on, you can always tell they're there. These you can't tell are there. This is at another level to me of when people are trying to do show quality finishing. There's every level possible, and then there's that top level where, wow, I don't know that you could make it any better than that. But let's just show this without belaboring the whole point here. Let's see if we've got it. I want to do it again without a camera cut. You gotta let it dry for a second. Without a camera cut, it's like a real thing. When it's just camera cuts, I don't know, but this is the real deal. That would show you how long. Now I would do that same thing here, up here, and at the end I'll have all the high spots, and then I'll do all the little edges and areas by hand. But let me show this. Hopefully this is what I think is good quality information that you can put in the bank. That's how that should look. Here's our sprayed off finish, and I'm sure a lot of people would love to have that finish on their bike. But what we're looking for, and it looks like, by the way, if you flip the paper over, there's no chewing gum on the paper at all. So actually now it's leading me to believe maybe I've been waiting too long, and I could be doing this 2 days, 3 days into it instead of waiting. I usually like to wait longer. But I try to learn something, and I try to share what I learn every day. That is just a couple of things that you can do to make your life a little bit easier. I always have the table padded with several towels, because at this point I don't want to take any chance of getting any scratches or any little imperfections in this. It's, no matter how you do this, this is a time-consuming thing to do this, whether you do it by hand, with a block, or both. I like to do it. My trick of tricks is you just have to take your time. You just have to be patient. And if you think you're going to do it all in a half an hour and go out riding, well, that probably is not going to happen. But if you do it in a bunch of, like, make a checkerboard out of it and do it in bite-sized pieces, at least that's the way it's worked for me. Now I want to be careful around that edge. I don't want to go through. Right now I don't want to have a touch-up. And we can touch this up if we did go through. I'd really like not to do that though. But if I do it in a bunch of bite-sized pieces, eventually I'm going to have it just have the little edges, and around the edges around here. And I'd like to have, in a perfect world, I'd like to have the whole thing flat sanded, not one little shiny spot, and then we'll be ready to buff it. Now, even if this paint were a little too soft right now, you could sand it. It's the buffing that's a problem. The buffing will not pop up glossy very quickly. It'll take longer. So by waiting that extra day, I've always found, you know, it doesn't make it any better. It just makes it easier. But this looks like it's sanding up fine. And I might have stumbled upon that I don't need to wait 4 or 5 days like in the old days. Maybe this modern paint, the Gavco. And when you talk to the people at Gavco, they say, oh, an hour later you can. I have not found that to be true. Not with what I'm doing. But again, they're doing it. See, that all has to do with if you're doing it in a body shop under controlled conditions with heating lamps and no humidity in it. I'm doing it, you know, like a Farmer Brown thing here. But the result is my stuff, I think, is as good as anybody's. Well, I always think what's important, I'm going to take a break, not to try to rush this. We're almost halfway there, little by little, but it is very important not to catch these edges. I don't want to overdo around here and go through and make a little spot. But as this dries up, I can look for any little shiny spots. This is really going to be really nice to buff out. But I've noticed it just takes more time than you think it does. You always allow a certain amount of hours, and in the end you put twice the amount of hours in, and then you're glad you did. Now with the whole tank sanded, now we get to the difficult part. I want to go around it, dry it off. Sometimes you have to dry it with a hairdryer and look for it. Now I can see right there is a little shiny, right there. A little shiny spot. Because if you get these out with the sandpaper, it just makes it a lot easier to buff, and you don't, what happens once you buff that area and then it comes back, you see that little speck, you can't take it out the buffing wheel. It's a lot easier just to hit it with the 2000 grit. Now, as I'm looking around the lettering, I see a spot right under the S. I see, let's see if we can show it, right there. That's got to come out, and there's a little spot up there. But this thing of being meticulous and trying to get every little shiny spot out, it pays in the end. It pays big dividends when you want that perfect finish that people can't find a flaw in. And this is where you just have to pay the price, and it takes extra time, but I have the time. Karen has about another, a half an hour before we're going to go do our errands, so my goal was to spend that time and get this absolutely flat sanded, so that when I get back, I'll be well rested and I can have about 14 more cups of coffee and do the buffing. And I think because it's a rainy day, it's a crappy day out there, I think we're going to get this done. We don't have any interruptions or Santa Claus doesn't come to see us or whatever. But let me just look here. There's one right up there. But it's just a question of being fussy and meticulous and everything. And I know it takes extra time, and everybody that looks at it the way I do anyway, well, what else would I do with this time? Let's see. Could I build some Legos or whatever? Well, everybody's got something else they enjoy. It just turns out that this is my passion, and I like having, I say it all the time, I like, even as a young kid, I had a rusty bicycle when everybody else had new bicycles, and I was determined there'd be a day when I have a shiny bicycle. And well, I still don't have a shiny bicycle. Well, it took even longer than I thought it would, but all the flat sanding is done now, and that when I get back from errands, that should buff out relatively straightforward, easily, and minimum amount of effort. And oh, it's a good feeling to have that done. That really was a lot of work this morning. Not many things more fun than shopping for vegetables on a rainy day. Oh my God. What fun. But believe it or not, Karen is keeping me alive. And what's good is going out, it gives my arm a rest. I'm like a pitcher that gets a little, I need the relief pitcher this afternoon. What I need is more coffee. But it is true. The vegetable diet that Karen has me on, the all vegetable, all banana and carrot diet, seems to be working well. Oh, the squirrel, I almost drilled him. Anyway, back to work. Let's have some coffee and get back to work. Diet, schmiet, just give us coffee. Oh my God, I need coffee. And Wendy, whether it rains or shines, or you buff or don't buff, just give us the seeds. Now the buffing compound that we're going to use is the 4CR 8065. And we have really had good luck with this. We're actually having pretty good luck sanding this relatively new paint. We're going to see how this compound works on it. And the other thing is I always use a brand new terry cloth bonnet for the buffing. I don't like to try to use up old ones. And yeah, you can wash them and you do your car with it or something, but this kind of high quality finish, I want nothing but a brand new terry cloth bonnet. From Harbor Freight. Now our trusty Harbor Freight buffer, they seem to last pretty long anyway. Now, I don't know if you bought, to be honest, if you bought one of the $100 ones, and these are like $15. I don't know if you bought 7 of these, if they would outlast the other one. I don't know. Anyway, a little tip. I used to do this all the time. Put these in a laundry, wash them, dry them. But they definitely, they lose a little bit of the edge. Like a razor blade that you resharpen. It's really not like when you get it from the razor company. But anyway, these are cheap. They basically come down to a couple bucks a piece. And you're doing a high quality finish job like this. I think that 2 for $3.99, but again, I'm not sure. You always get 2 in a pack. It pays at this point in time not to fool around. There's things you can fool around on. You can buy inexpensive stuff, but this is not one of them. This is like buying good quality sandpaper. Anyway, I wanted to do a little spot in real time. Just what seems like that's always what I do. The 8065 is for sure a high quality product. The Meguiar's would be my second choice. They make a real good quality. I guess everything they do is pretty good quality, to be honest. I've seen several ways. I always try to show this on the video. I've seen several ways people do this. They put the compound on the part. They put the compound on the pad. I like to put it on both, to be honest. And you don't need too much of this. That too much doesn't just slide and flies all over the mirror and everything. So I wanted to show this. Usually you're buffing, most of the buffing, to be honest, most of the buffing is happening right out at the edge. It's not much is happening in the middle. I can tell by when I'm polishing aluminum with this, the middle's almost clean. So it's the edge that does all the work. So anyway, just to make a point, to get one little part of this done, let me get a clean microfiber. I wanted to show this, and then the rest of it is going to be a lot of hand labor, that's for sure. But I probably put too much on there. I'm trying to be too cute about this, but tank is all sanded, arm is all rested. Let's do one little spot. I think when people see one little spot in real time, even though it's kind of boring to watch, I know you fall asleep, but it's really not good for me. If you put it on fast forward, kind of defeats the whole purpose of it. I want to show it in real time. Just tough it out for a minute or so. No, I don't, because I don't know if this paint is going to respond like 5- and 6-day-old paint does. I don't know. We're gonna take a quick look. I'll know right away. Well, I'll show it on a close-up, but let's show it on a close-up. You be the judge. It seems like it's buffing up. And I'm not sure till I finish the whole job if it's going to be that it. See, what happens is when the paint is really glass hard, it buffs up almost instantly. When it's a little soft, it takes a little bit longer, but it'll still buff up. But in the worst of all worlds, if this buffs up and it buffs up, let's say soft, it doesn't really have the shine I'm happy with, I'll wait the extra 5 days and just run a buffer over it again. Now, because I'm trying to learn from this experience, and keep in mind, in my opinion, and what I try to do myself, is I'm on an ongoing, always and forever learning quest to make things better, easier, cheaper, whatever. I feel like, here's the way I feel about doing this. It looks like, and I'm looking at this really, really believe me, like a connoisseur or something. This buffed up. It took a little bit longer. I would guarantee if I let this sit 2 or 3 more days, it would buff up quicker. I don't think it'll buff up better. So because I've already got this started and because it's a rainy day, I just want to finish this part of it today. And that's a good goal, by the way. Not an unrealistic goal, but it does seem like I'm maybe 1 day more, and it would just make it easier. There's a big difference between making it where in the past I've taken it when I buff the wheels by hand, and in a minute I'm done. This required about 5 extra minutes of running the buffer on, and I try to put some of that on fast forward only so that you're not bored to death. But I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to buff the whole thing out today, and I will call that a rough buffing, and then maybe 3 or 4 days from now when I'm waiting for other stuff to happen around here, or another rainy day, I'll try buffing this out again real quick with the 8065 and see how that works. But right now, I'd say, I have learned something from the experience, and I think the thing I've learned is that for me, under my shop conditions and under the way I spray, remember this is an awful lot of paint. This has probably got 10 coats if you did it with a spray gun. I did it with that airbrush technique. There's a lot of paint on here. The thicker the paint is, the longer it's going to take to cure too. And so for me, I feel like I'm sharing good information. If you have no compelling reason to do this on the 2nd or 3rd day, wait a couple extra days. I think that's the lesson of the day. But I will get the rest of this buffed out today. I do have the time, and it is a rainy day. Now, as I'm just getting set to start the second side here, and the top, it really just took a lot of extra work. And, well, but I'm in the middle of doing this. But hey, I thought I'd share something. I got a call from Vlad. Haven't seen him in a while. He had a little mishap at the end of last year. He's back. He got a new Aprilia, and he's got some carbon fiber parts that he wants to have clear coated. And he wants me to make the carbon fiber nice and shiny like that. Well, he's got good taste in women, you know. That's telling the truth. I like everything shiny. Anyway, a week from now, we'll be working on that parts. Hopefully, we'll get Chris's bike done first, and hopefully today we'll get this rough buffed out. Now, in the very end, there's always some little spots you really can't get a buffer down into. In this case, it's around the tank edge and around the bottom where I have to do this basically by hand, around the gas cap. And what's important here is that if you don't skip a step, because once this is put back on the bike, it's very hard to get your hands or buffing wheels into these spots. So right now, to have to do this actually didn't go as bad as I thought it would go. But I've learned a lesson that I just, in the future, will let it go that extra couple of days. Just as I think it's in my mind, and it could be. Because paint is such a variable thing. If you're painting something in California and it's 90 degrees, and I'm painting something in Canada and it's 10 below zero, that paint is going to dry a totally different way. Paint is always geared to dry and cure at 72 degrees. And the reality is, if you have what I always call the Jay Leno shop, yeah, well, that's fine. But you know, the people that are watching this video, I guarantee you, most of them, maybe not all of them, most of them are working like I am with a limited budget, a limited amount of time, and you don't have some, you call in a body double to do the sanding. You're doing the sanding, so you don't have Luciano to come over and sand it for you. So it's not like when you watch those car shows like Bitchin' Rides, you know, they look and they make a drawing of something and then they call, hey, okay, get the guys in here to do this. You know, we don't have the guys. The guys is me. So anyway, not to make a big deal out of it. I enjoy this, and as I've said so many times before, it's my passion to have shiny things, smooth looking, easy to maintain. It's been a passion my whole life. So the absolute last thing of finishing this, I put on a coat of Flitz by hand without any effort here to wipe it off. And that's just for protection. We really got the gloss from the 8065. And when this is finally wiped down, you need to wipe it with a really clean microfiber, not one that you've been using a wipe mop up the floor with or something. And I think, and I'm certainly not sure yet, because as I'm going around this, I'm looking for little spots I missed, but I think I've got it. And if I don't, I'll go back and do it. Now, I wanted to take the back masking off, take the gas cap off, even though I'm going to do some more buffing on this in a couple of days. But I just wanted to just get a look at what the effort of today was all about. We don't need the back masking anymore, and did the job. And I understand, and I always thank Steve for his input, but I don't feel comfortable breaking that seal by the fuel pump. And it's just me. I've not had good luck in the past, especially with the FZR. Boy, that was a nightmare to get that to seal up again. I don't know why that is, if the metal gets old. Pete at Circle Cycle told me one of the reasons is these old gaskets that you're buying in the store. Some of them are 20 years old. They're not made recently, especially if you buy them for an antique bike. So maybe Pete's right. So as I'm putting the cap on, I was thinking, well, when we did the FZR, of course, and Glenn came over with the gold gas cap. Yeah, it was pretty cool, but I know you can't put a gold gas cap on here, and it really doesn't even matter because it gets covered by the radar detector anyway. And so it's just one of the restrictions on this. Now, two of these bolts, these two here are the shorty bolts that they just hook into here. You really only have 3 bolts holding this on, so it can be, there we go, it can be a little tricky if you don't know that, getting it put back. But this has been a heck of a day. Wow. And there's days that go by and I never know what's going to happen 10 minutes in the future. But having this all buffed out, and I'm just excited as could be about this project. I know I say it over and over again and you're probably bored and say shut up, but boy, it's when you get to this point, it's that Jimmy Johnson thing of absolutely that all we got run out the clock now. And the assembly on this is really not a big deal. There's no part of this job that's like an R1 where you need the manual to put it back together. This you can just do from memory, really. Anyway, that is, I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I have enjoyed working on this bike. Now, one of the things that did dawn on me that I could do is I could paint this gold with the matching gold paint. The only problem is because the radar detector is up here with the magnets, it takes a beating. So I don't, and because you don't see it, it's obscured. I really don't see a lot of future in that. So we reached another watershed in the project, and I'm not sure this could have gone any better. Wow, and as I look at it, just couldn't be any happier. Anyway, we had a lot of things on this video to do today. Every one of them got done, but the rain didn't stop, so we really didn't even lose a day. So hope you enjoyed watching the video, hanging out, watching us in the shop. Maybe you're a member of the A-Team. Maybe you should be. And thanks for watching.